Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Severin and in this video I'm speaking about the new moon in Leo happening on the 8th of August in 2021. And this new moon can feel a little bit like you are swinging between a victim mode where things are falling apart and things are really challenging and difficult, or you feel a bit more like a hero and you're taking action and you're stepping into what's true for yourself. And perhaps you are swinging a little bit in between the two. And that's also why my video is one day late. So, expressing the energy for this new moon in Leo, or the weather for it, like we can deal with that energy, we cannot change it, that's what's alive, but how we deal with it is then the question. And Leo very much stands, like the sun and the moon and Mercury are in Leo, stands for our heart, for coming back into our center, into our courageous energy from where we can create and we can be passionate, we can be energetic and set boundaries. It's also, like I would call it, the coming, and that's really what it is about, learning to come into our own inner authority. So taking action from what's feeling truly alive within us. And that, perhaps with this new moon, is being challenged and wants to be expressed. So it's about being seen, stepping into yourself and admitting where you're at, even though that feels very uncomfortable. And why does it feel uncomfortable? Because, and I've been speaking in every video about that, Uranus is squaring Saturn this entire year. So Uranus is this energy that is disruptive, that is chaotic, that is sudden. It's like an earthquake or a lightning bolt hitting you, and it's a waking up call. But it's also about taking action, especially for this new moon, and that's very challenging because we are feeling that the old, that's what Saturn represents, it's not working anymore. So Saturn is challenging the sun and the moon. So Saturn is challenging how we are seen. And maybe it's time, and we are being confronted to a sudden event, Uranus, perhaps becoming sick or having an information from somebody else, being confronted, being stuck, like Uranus is our body or our environment, that we have to deal with a certain situation. And we are challenged to admit where we are not any longer. So it's not about figuring out what's the solution or where you're heading forward, but just admitting that your old version is not there anymore because it has been challenged and falling apart this entire year already and will so continuously until the end of the year. And it's about falling apart. It's about being challenged and then admitting, well then, who are you right now in this moment? What is alive for you? Speaking your own truth, shining your own light, and actually admitting for where you are at. And that can feel, especially if you don't have so much fire energy in your chart, then this can feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit like being naked and admitting how you actually are in this process of unraveling, of unfolding, or let's say fall apart, and reinventing yourself, even though you don't know where this is leading us. So also, we are being sandwiched with this new moon between two full moons in Aquarius. So full moon in Aquarius happened 2 weeks ago on the 23rd and 24th of July, and will happen again on the 22nd of August, again in Aquarius. So this sign of Aquarius, where we have Jupiter and Saturn inside, there's a lot of emphasis in it, and it's also ruled by Uranus. So it's again this capacity of detaching, of seeing the bigger picture and analyzing where we're at. It can also be that we can become a bit cold or detached, but there's this visionary aspect of almost seeing in the future of where we are heading to and what we are becoming, which is wonderful and feels probably a bit more safe and secure. But right now, it's also about admitting where we are not. So the new moon is really leading then into the full moon, where we then understand in the long term, or like in 2 weeks again, that all this deconditioning, all this falling apart, all this is admitting, this being honest and speaking from where we're at and not trying to pretend or to adjust or please somebody, that this is actually what we are looking for in the long term. And it all makes sense. All this chaotic energy of Uranus is there for a reason, even though we don't see the bigger picture. So having said that, it's also beautifully to understand that Mars and Venus are in Virgo right now. So both of them, especially Mars is at home, are working on trying to understand, to figuring out the details of having a routine, that's a Virgo, having a daily structure, maybe purifying ourselves. How can we fall apart more gracefully, you know, without making these human mistakes and being so vulnerable and so silly and just making things that look awful and that we might be judged for. So how can we bring more perfection in it? But the beautiful thing is that Venus is trined by Pluto and Uranus and opposed by Neptune. Now, what are these forces? There's a force that helps us, which is trined, so it's a supportive force with Uranus, and that there is almost a deeper understanding, and that there is meaning in the chaos. There is a reason why we are falling apart. So it's almost like trusting that there is something that needs to be happening. It almost feels like liberating and good. It's like, oh my God, I spoke the truth, or I admitted how I feel. And I was so afraid of the reaction, or I was so afraid of not making money, or I was so afraid of how my parents will react, or what my partner will say, or whatever the admitting process brings up. But if you have done that, like, there is so much liberation and freedom if speaking your truth in it. Then also the Plutonian force, which is really about giving permission to fall apart, giving permission to die, in a sense, like where there's actually a deep healing of not needing to know anymore what you should do instead, or how you should fill that empty space, or how do you act, but instead actually just letting go. So being okay with that process of letting go, of this feeling of rejuvenation, almost in healing, by accepting maybe the negative, you know, parts in you that feels very lonely or sad or depressed or worries or is afraid. Like, all these parts are part of being human, and there's nothing wrong with you feeling that. It's actually your reactivity to it that makes you stuck in that energy that cannot flow anymore. So suddenly the recognition of that gives you actually an allowance. So these personal planets are being under the force of the collective planets. So there's a lot of bigger planets that we have no control over. They're forcing upon us a bigger domain. And then we come into Neptune in Pisces, that's where it's home, opposing Venus as well. And there is like this surrender, almost like, wow, if that's deconditioning or unraveling process and dying and with negative emotions and challenging feelings is happening anyway, if I'm fully giving in and trusting the process, there is a whole new version of me that is actually there, alive underneath. So it's almost like, by falling apart, we don't have to understand what the new version is, but it's almost like there is already, like, it's almost like peeling away layers by layers, and underneath there is actually a more, I wouldn't say true, but maybe a more authentic version. And that's also a great and beautiful word for Leo, a more authentic version there, already there waiting, and that has been there all along. And stepping into that maybe is something that you have felt all along, but you're just ready with this new moon process to embrace that part and really give it permission to bring that up. Maybe you finally find the guts to say something that you have felt all along, but you were never really willing to step into that. And by this process, there's this deeper version coming out, and it's time to step into. It's time to take action. It's time to show that this is a part that you also see, that you can recognize, and that you can allow to be there. And from that, then we are stepping into the full moon in 2 weeks, where we have an Aquarian full moon that is helping us to understand how do we bring that into our lives, how does that make sense on a bigger picture, and how this change is actually there that we all have been waiting for. So in that sense, I made this video a bit shorter than other ones. I am in holiday and I'm enjoying, and I'll be back at the lake in a few days. So I hope you're doing well, you're riding the waves, and I really hope that this is not just a video that informs you about the energies, but you also that you're living life and taking action and really bringing what is lying up on your heart and inform. Like take action upon what is necessary, do something with it, and not just wait for somebody else to tell you what is waiting there, or being confronted by life and being challenged, but also take action, especially with this new moon. Bring into the world that light that everybody is waiting to see, that you already are. With this, I wish you a beautiful new moon, and take care, and hear you soon.